Hello. Today we're going to talk about how to draw light and shadow. Understanding light and shadow is one of the cornerstones of making your drawings feel real and solid. The easiest place to start with understanding light and shadow is what we call single source lighting. And that's just really a fancy way of saying that we're only using one light source, like a spotlight, or in this case, a candle. If the object is facing the light, then it's in the light. And if it's facing away from the light, then it's in shadow. It's that simple. The most important thing to understand is how to apply these principles to the three basic forms: the cube, the cylinder, and the sphere. Let's start with the cube. The cube has 6 sides, or planes as we call them, and when one of them is facing the light, then it's lit, and when it's facing away from the light, it's in shadow. So when we put our candle over here, and the light travels over and in front of this cube, the leftward plane and the top plane are in the light, and the right side is in shadow. Oftentimes, when an object is on a surface like this cube, we'll also get a cast shadow. The shadow is cast on the side that is facing away from the light. This is what really makes the object feel like it's inhabiting a space. Just to clarify, let's look at what the light is doing from a top view. The light travels from the candle to the cube and lights these two sides, and it's going to leave these other two in shadow. Because the cube is blocking the light from continuing, this shadow is cast, and the shadow is cast in the direction of the light, and on the far side, it even mirrors the shape of the cube. Now let's do another little experiment. Let's draw cubes in a few different angles and show how the light affects the cube's shadows in these positions. The candle in this case will be in the middle of the paper. The first cube looks a lot like the one in the example, even down to its cast shadow. The second one is hanging off the ceiling, kinda like an exit sign. The sides on the right and the bottom are facing the light, so they'll remain as they are. But the left side is facing away from the light. Let's darken that one in with shadow. Since this is on the ceiling, I want to also add this little cast shadow on the top, since this cube is blocking the light from continuing here. Let's also do one more down here. Again, we see that the top plane is facing the light, as is the one on the right. But this back plane isn't getting any light, so we'll go ahead and darken that one in with shadow. And lastly, don't forget the cast shadow. This grounds the cube in space. Cylinders have a top and bottom, just like the cube, but it's surrounded by one rounded shape, rather than the 4 sides of a cube. The same rule we used with the cube applies to the cylinder. The areas facing the light will remain there, and the areas facing away from the light will be in shadow, because the light can't reach them. There are just a few quirks we have to account for. I'm going to say that the light will stop reaching the cylinder at around this point, So I draw a line down and start to shade in the back of the cylinder from here. This line I just drew is where the shadows are the darkest. We call this point the terminator. From there, the shadows are still dark, but not quite as dark. So I leave a little white space to communicate that in my rendering. I'll also add a little cast shadow, just to show that it's on a surface. Let's take a look at the top-down view. And you can see what I was talking about earlier. It's just like the cube in that whatever is facing the light is lit, and whatever is facing away from the light is in shadow because the light can't reach it. We just have to account for the roundness of the form. To do this, I like to add these transitional lines that indicate we're transitioning from light to shadow gradually, rather than the abrupt transitions we saw on the cube. I add some of these on the other side as well. Make sure to curve your lines to follow the form of the object, in this case, that of a round cylinder. Lastly, let's talk about the sphere. Spheres also have a terminator, like the cylinder, but in this case, it's not a straight line. It curves around the length of the form, kind of like a line of longitude on a globe, or it's almost like a rubber band is wrapped around. Spheres also have the same quirk as cylinders in that the shadow is darkest around the terminator and it gets lighter as it wraps back around. And just as we did with the cylinder, we'll add some transitional lines to help soften this gradation from light to dark. And like we always do, we finish with the cast shadow that's being cast by the sphere onto this ground plane. The shape of the cast shadow has to mirror the shape of the object that's casting it. This basically means that we need a kind of a rounded oval shape to represent the cast shadow of the sphere. If you learn to apply these rules to any of these three forms, and there are many variations, then you're well on your way to mastering the art of drawing. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.